You're listening to All Things 3D, where we talk about the world of fabricating, designing, and capturing in the third dimension. You see it too? You promised you can. Yeah, it is real after all. She's finally arrived in the land of mist and fog, a place the Northmen call Hell. Turn back, go back, go back. It's not safe. Go back, go back, go back. It's not safe. Look around and you will see them. The drowned, the sick, the slain. Here they lie, rotting in the fields and rivers of hell. But the dead don't always lie still here.
Good afternoon. Hi, this is Mike Balzer, and this is All Things 3D in Review for 08/10/2018. So today we've got all kinds of announcements as well as some cool things that I've been working on that I'm going to talk about in the 3D Tech Closet. But for now, let's get started with our first item. And as you notice, I had a little video that started this about the Hellblade Senua's Sacrifice. There's a VR edition, and I played it a little bit. And I have to say that it is extremely immersive, and I felt the 3D audio was superb. In fact, I wanted them, or at least wanted to do an interview with them, but they're extremely busy. As you may know, they have just been bought out by Microsoft. And so I guess they're really busy with that. So they're not giving any interviews, or at least not to me. So hopefully maybe in the future. But if you obviously have a VR headset and want to give it a try, please do. If you've already purchased it, it is free. I thought the content was immersive. I'm not a big puzzle guy, but it's pretty easy to figure out after the first one what they're looking for. Plus, there are enough videos and help me videos out there if you run into problems. But I found that a lot of VR past 30 minutes gives me a headache now. So keep that in mind when you're playing it. But I think it is pretty neat. I do like the third person perspective. That makes you kind of feel like an outside observer. As you saw, I was kind of paddling with her. At least that's what I felt like originally using it. So here's something cool. If you go out to, and I'll bring this up here in a second. If you go out to YouTube and watch the 3.6 trailer that I sent out in the previous episode 2 weeks ago, I downloaded it and I noticed that there's a unique 360 mode that you might want to be look at because it's different. And I'm going to go ahead and play the video now.
The gate.
So you notice
It's opening.
it's like 4 sections now. So it looks like the front version, which would be on the top and
It's
bottom.
coming.
And then the
It's
side, but
again.
notice how it's all contained in one
It's Hella.
Yes,
frame.
the source of the darkness. It's
coming.
This is your
Sky. They now have this feature to turn that on. So keep that in mind. If you downloaded YouTube 360, it's now in a new format.
What are you doing?
It's kind of a
You're
unique
showing
side-by-side
weakness.
mode.
You're not a warrior.
4
You're a
slices,
disgrace.
top and bottom.
The gods will punish you for this.
Might be there. Let me drop that down. So if you didn't hear me, this is their unique 360 mode that you can, if you download one of the YouTube videos, I'll go ahead and pause it right now. As you can see, there are 4 stripes. I think this might be their new process that they're also using along with the VR 180 mode. I don't know if that's a more effective technique, Let me see if I can bring it up. This particular video is 2560 by 1440. And then I guess they have a let's say 3840 mode. Let me check real quick. There is a 4K. So let's take a look at its properties. So yeah, it's 3840 by 2160 for the 4K. And as you can see, I don't know if that is more effective. I don't know if they're doing it to essentially make it, or the lack of ability to be able to use this in other types of VR players. But as mentioned, the Skybox can play these now, but that's what they look like. And they look okay in the YouTube VR viewer, but if you want to download them, which I do, because one, you can download them in their full 4K versions, but it seems that unless your VR 360 viewer is capable of using this new format, you won't be able to view them. Luckily, Skybox has adapted to it. Okay, well, let's move on to the next item. So for some of you, I've kind of noticed that I guess I disappointed you by talking about DefCAD or Defense Distributed, and obviously I've had some concerns with it. I've had two people who've unsubscribed, unless I've just gotten really bad and people don't feel it's worth the time to keep subscribing to me. But in any case, I still feel it's important to talk about, as you know, and I'll bring it up here. They had a court order to essentially keep their files from being up on the web. But if you're like me, as you know, many of these files have been available for some time. In fact, I found a GitHub location that had all their sites, and it's been up there for several years now. So the fact is that they've had this, and then obviously GitHub, and I'm not going to provide the link here. Obviously, you can do it and find it yourself. Also, if you're a torrent fan, there's ways of getting the files there. So I agree. These files have been available for years. The point is, the equipment is now getting cheaper and better to actually do something with them, other than just create that one gun that I personally wouldn't waste my 3D print materials on, only because I don't think it would fire for me, because normally things blow up in my face and literally I don't want that to happen. So that wouldn't be something I would be trying. But I really like that Ghost Gunner mill, obviously not for guns, but the fact is that it's low cost and in a great little CNC mill device, 3-axis. I thought was really neat. And I've kind of looked to see if there are any in that kind of price range, and there really isn't. So, well, with that being the case, there are some things that are good on it. I'm just not a big gun fan. And I really think that he should have just gone into just creating 3D tools and let somebody else do it. But obviously, he's trying to make a statement. Oh, well. But you can get the files for the Ghost Gunner as well. So, as mentioned, just because the website's not up doesn't mean you can get them. Also, Vice News, they've done a few episodes. They talked about it. It's really neat. This particular video, they actually went to a 3D fabricator and basically came up with the same things that I have mentioned. He actually went ahead and print these particular, can't remember the name of his gun, but actually printed it and then talked about it. And I thought that was kind of cool that they had kind of an in detail 3D fabrication from a 3D fabricate on the tools and what can be made from just the 3D plastic. And I think they did a good job with that. But just keep in mind that there are other ways of obtaining components other than just this type of 3D printer. And that's where my concern is. But the fact is, this has been available for some time. This isn't something new. And people have already been taking advantage of CNC milling in order to create their guns for decades. So you take it what you asked. I think it was important that we discuss it. But again, a lot of ignorant people out there wailing their hands and crying wolf. And, the sad thing is that wolf has been out for years now. Okay. enough of that. Let's get into the other major item this week, and that's Magically. Yes, you can now buy one. And you know what's so funny? And let's see if I can put, now that I live in uh, Portland, I put my Portland address in there and checked, and it says, great, I can have one delivered to me in my area. So even though I think it indicates Seattle, I guess the span of space is adequate. But who knows? Maybe once I sign in and purchase it, they'll say, oh, I'm sorry, you can't. But the fact is, I can get one. And if you live in one of, I think, 5 cities, but again, put your zip code in there and see. But it is 22.95, and I'd hate to say, "Oh, I called it right," not like somebody else who seems to do that. But I did identify that this particular product was going to be about 2,000 to 2,500, so it's kind of smack right in the middle there. And the reason I thought that is they said like a high-end PC, which is about that price. So kudos for them for doing so. There's been a couple of articles, and more importantly, look for articles from developers who've had experience with the HoloLens. And in this particular case, the guy seems to like it. He basically says it's just a little bit more of an improvement in some areas in the HoloLens, and he goes through talking about the tracking and world position, which is extremely important. He still thinks HoloLens beats it out. The optics, he says, are better on the Magic Leap. I should hope so for 2 years. He said he couldn't determine if there is any depth of field. And, I've actually been working on something myself, which I'm going to talk and reveal a little bit later. So, yes, it's very easy to, I wouldn't say hallucinate, but imagine that you're seeing depth because you can focus on a single plane. It obviously is much harder than actually working as we normally do with our eyes. So I at least sometimes get the effect of depth of field when I'm in a 3D environment. So that could be the case here. And even if it was available, I don't think there are that many layers, not at least like what was in the patent and what they described in their units early on. But again, downsizing it, making it portable, there has to be limitations and obviously making it cost effective. He does seem to like the eye tracking, other than it's not being used in some of the applications, other than for IPD. And that kind of makes me wonder about IPD, unless and I'm going to get to a little video from The Verge here in a moment, unless they actually move those two plates. That means you're dynamic or not dynamically. You're actually shifting the image inside the panels themselves, and that can possibly modify the viewpoint in order, let's say, make the IPD smaller and maybe larger. You're actually cutting your edges there. And I found that in VR as well. Who does that? Google does that. And then there was there's, can't remember the other. Oh yeah, the Windows mixed reality headsets also have an adjustment, but again, it is done with the panels themselves. So you're actually offsetting the screen and losing a few pixels in doing so. So I don't know if that's the case there, but the fact is that it's available, and they use actual eye tracking in order to do this. Kind of a neat feature. Now the controller, I'm very interested about that. Now it says it's a 6 degrees of freedom. I heard somebody else say that it actually uses magnetic waves, but frankly, Magic Leap comes up with their own imaginative phrases and terminology for all their stuff. So I don't really know how it works. The fact is, if it is using something that requires an electromagnetic field, that would be kind of cool. But if you remember, there was another product that has never made it to market and took a lot of people's money. Won't mention their name, 6 Sense, but they also use a similar technology. So it'd be interesting if that's what's actually being done there. I'll have to take a look at it. And then gestures controls, they don't seem to have a lot of them right now, even though they are in the SDK. They mainly rely on that controller, which kind of makes sense because it's more accurate. And a lot of people have complained about the HoloLens, their ability to do the gestures and the snap and the drag and the other features. They just say there's some latency with that makes it feel sluggish. So that's a good article. And then, like I said, I have downloaded the Verge article, but go out to the YouTube because I'm only going to play a little bit of it, so that you can get an idea of this. And I'm just going to talk over her. She does a great job. She has a lot of great articles. Sadly, there wasn't any articles for this particular product, but they actually have some pretty good videographers, and so it looks orange. I wonder how they got that version, but they kind of go through here and kind of describe what you're seeing, which I think is kind of neat. So yes, you've got this, I don't know, 16 by 9, maybe a little bit more, maybe an 18 by 9, something like that. But here's the little plate, and this is how the HoloLens works as well. So that's why they talk about the limited FOV, because the only thing that you can see that's projected is what's in the center here. And obviously, that's a huge issue, and that's what they discuss. And what she made the point about is that this product isn't that much better than the HoloLens. Now, of course, it's cheaper, and it should be a better performing device because what do they use? I can't think of an Atom chip, but this uses the NVIDIA TX2, which in my experience is a fairly fast chip. Plus, it has a Pascal CUDA cores as well as graphics. That's very similar to a low-end video graphics card. So that's all built into it. So I would see this performing a little better. But with that being said, it is still $2,295, and they'll come to your door, uh, kind of like a salesman. I wonder if they provide other pitches along with it. But they say that's because they want to make sure that they provide you the right one for your head, which I think is a good thing because I'll talk a little bit later about the Lenovo Mirage. And I don't, there's got a couple of different names. I thought it was the one, but it's actually a different name. But their Daydream headset, for whatever reason, it doesn't seem to fit my head correctly. And so I think that's important. Also, the fact is, this thing does not allow eyeglasses. So if you have poor vision, this may not work for you. I guess later on there'll be prescription lenses that you can get with it at an additional cost. And then I guess there are different nose pieces, which I think is kind of cool because everybody has a different nose. And I'm going to talk about the Oculus Go wide face mask insert that they have now that sadly pinches my nose. So clearly my face doesn't conform to the standard of either eye mask pads that come with the Oculus Go. But we'll talk about that later because I've got a cool update for that that I think anybody can afford and actually provides a much more rigid um, support system for the headset. Okay, so let's look on to the next item. If you are a Pimax uh, backer, you know now that the GTX 1070 will not be powerful enough to run it at 8K at the full FOV, and I don't know if the article from VR Focus identifies exactly. Uh, it says, of course, up to 190 FOV, but they say it'll be somewhere down like 150 or something like that. Now, obviously, that's still more than most headsets, but the reason for that is they probably have to reduce the actual frame size more to like a 5K display in order to provide the performance necessary for a 1070. Of course, if you've got a 1080 or even two 1080s in SLI, you should be able to run this full scale. So the fact is, some people mention it's great that they're identifying this now and working to make it better. But the other thing is, I think they really pushed the marketing to get people drawn in. And then I think some people are going to feel disappointed that their product isn't what it should be. Guess they took a page from Magic Leap on that one. So keep that in mind if you're a backer. I'm not. I'm waiting for one to show up on eBay when somebody is really disappointed with their headset. Okay, on to another product. If you're a developer, you may be familiar with Real Illusions. They create a number of products, but one that's very interesting is Character Creator 3 that allows you to throw this in so that you can create characters for VR, AR games, or at least that's what they say. But for animation, I've got a little video that I'll go ahead and show now. Where is that video? I've lost the video. Here we go. Okay. Well, as you can see, they've really come a long ways since the early days. A lot of people thought this was a joke, but if you require characters, and I don't remember what their licensing is on it, but I think this new pre-order version, which I'll jump back out to here, is going to be $399. No, actually, I think it's $129 if you're a member, and then I guess a standard $109. Well, it says to see the member upgrade price, so I don't remember what my price was. But it appears you can buy it for $129, which I think is a pretty good deal. This seems to want or compete with Adobe Fuse, which is another product out there that I have used, but I found that this has quite a bit more material and items. So go ahead and move forward with it, especially if you're a developer wanting to create content. And then they have, obviously, if you want to use this for photorealistic use, it's for $179. You can get it with the iRay, which I think is kind of interesting. Well, it depends. They have a public domain version, which is the company from NVIDIA that creates this. And then I guess they have a version, a professional version. I don't know which version this is. The fact is that they're charging them normally $100, but appears to be about another $50. I think that's probably a good deal. The iRay renderer is pretty neat. And then finally, you can get an essential bundle with a lot of stuff for $229. And I found that they kind of nickel and dime you through this. But if you need it, it's a great little tool. It can incorporate character creation, animations, and so forth fairly easy through using a Connect, either version 1 or version 2. And plus some other tools, as well as doing facial animation. So there's a lot of plugins that can be added to this to create a full product. Now, the other thing, well, it says it has the Go Z, which is the tool to work with ZBrush. And then it has OBJ export capability. So I thought that was an extra cost for their CC3 pipeline, but maybe that is not the case, or actually, let's take a look. So yeah, the pipeline gives you all this particular stuff. And so I guess that is included with this version for $129, which I think is a good buy and could be very helpful. All right, let's move on to the next item. So we're into 3D design, architecture, and engineering. Thought this was kind of neat. Let's see, and I've actually got a little video to show. It's a little GIF video of it being used. So this particular product comes from Russia, and it is a large, there's the GIF file, that creates sections for homes, but because, let's see, do we have it up here? Yeah, it doesn't actually have it. Shoot. Got the wrong article. Yeah, so this talks about it 3D printing in small sections, but they have a larger version, a frame version that runs like a Cartesian 3D printer and basically puts cement in streams just like it would on a small 3D bed. So, kind of neat. I don't know about them claiming to be the largest, but it'd be kind of interesting to bring the whole frame out there and have them do a full frame of a house using concrete. Now, some people asked what actually is the concrete mixture that they can use with it. That's unknown at this time. But I think, yeah, again, I don't have the right article, but you can find it yourself. The rate of flow is pretty impressive. So what do they say? Yeah, there's your cement mixture, 15 meters per second. So that's pretty impressive. So maybe, who knows, your next home or office building is going to be 3D fabricated, just like this. Okay, moving on to the next item. Supposedly, this is built in, or you can download it. I was able to play with it. It's called 3D Builder. And this particular person, James Brooknell, was able to do a small comparison review between the two. And one thing that strikes me immediately after playing with it is that Tinkercad is more of a what do you want to call it, a CAD program that uses solid modeling. And then from there, it can create STLs where this, what do they call it, 3D Builder from Microsoft is more of a, what do you want to call it, a vertex editor, basically working with 3D models. So you could bring in your own models and modify them. And it has a lot of primitive shapes that you can not only create, but then you can make a library of things that you create. It has subtractive, additive functionality, so you can combine things. But it doesn't really have a real vertex editing like Mesh Mixer, which I think was a cool tool. But it's free and comes in the units, so you might want to try that out. And then this person basically identifies which one he would use. And again, because they're two different animals, if you need something to do solid modeling, go with the Tinkercad. If you need something to do some basic vertex editing, then I would go with the other product. Both support 3D printing. The 3D Builder from Microsoft actually goes into their own 3D print tool, and from that tool, you can determine. I think it has somewhat of a limited number of printers that it can print with, but you can basically go from that directly out 3D fabricating. I don't think that is the case with Tinkercad, but Tinkercad's been around for a while, so that might be available. And remember, Tinkercad is actually, I think, owned by Autodesk now. So, oh well, try it out. I do believe it says the fall edition, but I think it was last fall. You can go out to the Microsoft Store and download it and put it on your Windows 10 system if you already have fall edition. Okay, so let's move on to the next item, and let's see where we've got here. Well, I thought this was kind of interesting. This article kind of talks about how 3D technology is transforming medical imaging, and many of these things we've covered on numerous cases, but one that I thought was very interesting was what they call cinematic rendering. Offers a clear picture of complex structures. There's an article that I'll go out to. It's an abstract that had some images, but essentially it's something that I've already seen, and they'll come up here. Let's see if we can bring one up. Notice the image, the quality of the image having more of a lifelike quality. So it basically talks about the process of taking CT and MRIs, running them through a volume renderer, and then coming up, and here's a comparison. Here's what you would see in a 2D, and then creating a more realistic 3D depiction. And all this can be done in a product called 3D Slicer, which I've talked about many times. So go ahead and play with it. There may be some new tools, or download the abstract here and take a look at this yourself. Some of the other tools mentioned here, tomosynthesis, we've talked about that for breast cancer detection, basically using a 3D X-ray device, but taking multiple angles and varying the depth so that you can create a 3D model of breast tissue, which gives them a better improvement in the way that they can detect cancerous or tumors within the breast tissue. And we've talked about that before. Okay, so let's move on to the next item. Hang on just a second. I don't want to lose this. You notice I kind of went out there for a moment, so I may be losing a camera. Okay, so moving on to the next one, artificial intelligence. We've talked about this before, using actually NVIDIA seems to be working on this, using 3D volumetric rendering tools in order to create very quickly proper rendering. So this would go hand in hand with number one. And then 3D computed tomography for angiography maps of vascular anomalies. This is really important because it allows them to zoom in to the vascular system with MRIs and CT in order to get a thorough inspection of a cardiovascular system that has been isolated to those components. Again, if you've seen any volume renderings, you'll know that there's a lot of noise. There's a lot of work that has to be done in order to provide a clear image depiction of whatever you're looking at. So what we're having is a set of tools now to do that. I wouldn't say automatically, but a lot easier than you had or could do in the past, without a lot of training from the standpoint or the technologists in order to render that stuff in a precise way. The other one that I thought was cool, and I've been reading about this, and we talked about it in a previous episode, is 3D ultrasound simplifies imaging processing. I think that's extremely important because what this does is allow these new 3D ultrasound machines to capture a large data set, and then from that large data set, so they could, let's say, if you were doing an abdominal scan, you'd be able to run the wand completely around the abdominal area, capture the entire data set, and then come back later on to provide different views and different isolation of components from those ultrasounds without having to call the patient back in. And as they said in this particular article, that's going to be extremely important. And one of the things that I have suggested, either through ultrasound or my opinion, we should be able to once a year, depending on your insurance, get a full head to toe CT scan with some of the newers that provide less Rinkins than the previous versions, so that we'll have a complete scan. Again, that data set that can be viewed at either as a baseline or compared to if you go in for, let's say, another CT scan for an ailment, you could use that as a baseline to compare differences. And so I thought that would be very interesting that we somehow move forward with something like that. And frankly, a full CT scan would probably set you back $800 to $1,000. But I think it's very vital to create a baseline that a lot of this can be used for. And so, again, read the article. It's great. And some of these have abstracts that you can go out and read. And I think it's very important. I think I totally agree from my own experience that 3D visualization in medicine is extremely important. All right, let's move on to the next item. Oh, that's the abstract from the previous article. So I thought this is cool. We're now in our 3D scanner. Oops, actually, I kind of missed one. Let's see if I can bring it up myself. It's called Naked Labs. Yeah, no, I'm not moving in that direction. What this is it's a 3D scanner. And here's a little video to kind of describe it. Something that I've been working with for some time, but it essentially has 3 RealSense sensors in it and a turntable that a person stands on and rotates. I'm kind of amazed that they say that turntable can support up to 330 pounds and allow you to rotate, but I think that's kind of neat. I think there's probably an accelerometer built into that turntable, one also to weigh you as well as determine that you stood in front of the scanners and you can actually rotate this. So I thought that was kind of neat. So the product, they have a full video that you can watch. I'm not going to play it. And then the tech specs are very interesting. So here it is, basically a mirrored device, or I guess you can get it open frame. I don't know what the difference in cost is, but you set it up, you stand on it. There are 3, as mentioned, RealSense devices in it. It runs through an app on your phone, and then it also, I guess, sends it up to the cloud for stitching and to create the model. It is unknown yet, so it's the RealSense 410 series. So let's go out and look at that. Jeez. So there you go. So it's a 400 series. I'm trying to think if this is the newer one. I don't think so. See what this brings up. Yeah, so it's an older one, but here are the 2 different models. The 435 is basically 2 cameras. I don't know if this has an actual projected screen or IR projector in the 435. So the 415 not only has an IR projector, but an RGB camera as well as 2 IR cameras. So as you can see, data stream of output resolution, 90 frames per second frame rate, which is pretty impressive. And so basically is a Connect type device or a structure sensor type device. And they use 3 of them, obviously, to capture 3 different areas of the body as you rotate, and then sends it up to the cloud to stitch them together. And stitching algorithms have gotten pretty good, and then brings it back down so that it looks, let's see if we've got some. Yeah, so here's the kind of 3D models. As you can see, there's not a lot of definition in them, so basically a Connect type device. And in fact, I don't even see any color, so clearly it's just a solid model. And you can buy it for $13.95, limited quantities available. So if you like yourself a lot, or you're really into determining what your body shape looks like to compare later on, I think that's something you should buy. I don't think it's something that I want in my house, not at this age, but I am working on that. So I don't know, maybe I should get one. No, I don't think so. Okay, so let's move on to the next item. So now we're back to the right item. Yeah. So there was a Kickstarter that I think was only 30 days. Because I actually only heard about it a week ago. And let's see what date. Does it have a date? Yeah, I don't know. So what's neat about this camera, one, as you can see, the early bird version of this was $21.99, or super early bird. And then an early bird kit was $22.99. And then Kickstarter Professional is $23.99. Obviously, they provide different number of components with it. And then a Kickstarter Special, I don't know what the difference is. It looks pretty much like the previous one. And all these will be available in September. And then you can get 2 of them. So if you know, I've covered the Insta360 Pro, which is about $3,500. This comes in well below that. And actually, if some of the videos that I've seen out on their website, and I was going to download one, but it was like 10 gigabytes, so I left it up there. I wouldn't know where I'd be able to show it. So here's and basically you should go out and look at this yourself. Here is one of the images. I found that the detail when zooming in was fairly detailed and was very crisp. And then here's a little video that you can go out to the website. And these are in 360, so I'll put it in anaglyph mode. And they have this one in a high-res 8K mode at 10 gigs, like I mentioned, but this will give you an idea. This one's able to support 4320, so it's about 4K, and it can actually do more than that. And then here are a few others. So I found that the camera looked very impressive. The thing that concerns me is that they showed off a camera that only had 4 cameras. And some people are already complaining. I think they have it that it has some issues with software. So, not again to say that that we're having another issue with something from China, but they seem to create this really great hardware, but sometimes the software just doesn't really work well, or at least for the English or the American market. But as you can see there, it looks a little clunky, but more likely, I think they put in a larger battery. Some of the images, like I said, are extremely impressive. The fact that I could do a 12K with HDR, I could see using this to create cube maps for scenes in your, let's say, in Unreal or Unity to provide backgrounds. The fact is that you can do stereo 360 videos, fairly good quality. The banding and the artifacts in these particular videos, now they may have cleaned them up, I thought were very impressive. So if this holds to be true, and I'll probably hold off, you can take, I guess they're taking pre-orders, so you can sign up for it right now. And so with that being the case, the quality, I think, is going to be pretty impressive. And as you can see there, raw information, HDR, AI-based object tracking, and then 8K image stitching directly in the system for live streaming. So again, if they can keep this price, what was it again? Let me zoom right back up. At 2,500, hopefully they can push it down to 2,000. I think that's an impressive deal. And obviously will compete fairly well with the Insta360 Pro. Some people have already identified, I guess, in the facts that it does have internal fans, and they say they basically use a separate mic. Uh, and it doesn't really determine the kind of mics that are built into it, if we have AmbiX built into it or not, or at least I didn't see it in there. But the other thing that they talk about is that you could get in close, and some of the, like I've got the views camera, and you can't get within like a meter of it. In fact, a little bit further, to get very close, as I show in one of the videos here, I think is very impressive. And another good thing that you could use, let's say in interviews or close up, let's say in a room. So I could see a lot of potential for this. I don't know. This seems like a pretty, I'm selling it to myself here. So take a look at it. I think it's a cool little product. All right, moving on to the next item. And here's their actual website. Both of these will be in the show notes. Okay, so moving on, there's, to go hand in hand with it, there's a company called Pixvana who just sent me their beta SDK today. So I haven't had a chance to actually work with it. But it's a VR 360, both stereo or monographic VR 360 solution that you can create from their SDK, like a Unity app, and put your videos up on their site, and then be able to click and choose which one. And you may be asking yourself, well, why would I want to do that? I can just send them up on YouTube. Excuse me. But what if you had content that you really didn't want to put out on YouTube? Because obviously they don't really support very well their video unless you have like millions of subscribers. So if you wanted to create an app that had video content in it, let's say in my case, I have those meditation VR that I did with one of them I did with John Carmack's Encoder. This would be a great product for that, because then you could put that out there and be able to view it. Now, supposedly this will work up to 8K. Again, I haven't tried it. There is a little video which I have here, so I'll show you how easy, or at least they say it is to actually do. It's 14 minutes, so I'll kind of skip around a little bit.
Hi guys, this is Prashant, and today I'm just going to be walking through how to set up a basic 360 video player in Unity using our SDK. By the end of the tutorial, we should have a playlist in the form of a grid of thumbnails, and you'll be able to click on a thumbnail, and that'll essentially trigger video playback for a video that you've uploaded to Spin Studio. I've already set up a Unity project here. I've just got a couple folders set up. I've got the scene, which is just containing our 360 video player scene, where we'll build the actual player, and images folder, where I'm keeping a couple pictures I just found on my computer that we'll use for the thumbnail art. The Oculus folder is basically the Oculus platform, which you can download from the asset store. I downloaded this because I'll be using an Oculus Rift for this demo. In VR, we have to make sure it's in the projector to your scene, but the source URLs. So you don't necessarily.
So it seems pretty straightforward. Essentially, like many Unity products that I've worked with, you essentially create a camera. And in this case, you create a camera and then bring in your content. And there are your videos. And then you can select one. So as you can see, I think it's going to be a fairly effective little product that you can work with, again, called Pixvana. Sign up for it, and it shows some of the companies that are working with it. And so I will try and put something up probably in the week before next, or the next podcast that I do, and then kind of talk about its use and how easy it is to work with. Now, let's look at pricing. So here's kind of the kicker. In order for you to utilize their product, you have to essentially pay them $1,200 a year. So that could be kind of disappointing. And then obviously a pro or a team version makes it a little more expensive. So that's kind of the disappointing thing, is you would have to literally do it in that fashion. The other trick is to basically create an app where you put the contents as either in the app itself, or have it so that it loads content that you may provide with it. And that may be the direction that I go as well. Okay, let's move on to the next item. This is another product that I've been working with the developer. His name is Alexander Shatlov. I hope I pronounced that correctly. He is from Russia, and he actually created a rigging system that was demoed, and I'll run this right now in the little window. But he created a rigging system that was showcased in the kite demo from the Unreal Engine, gosh, about a year ago. But if you notice there, he is positioning like a lot of different applications, the different articulating points. So it looks really sophisticated. Obviously, the important thing is to be able to do this directly in the Unreal Engine. So he has provided me a version to work with. So in the next 2 weeks, I will have a cool little demo to put together and a little tutorial on how to use it. But as you can see, to be able to do this and have timelines that are much more complicated, I wouldn't say more complicated, um, more robust than what you have in the Unreal Engine, I think is pretty cool. And I look forward to actually playing with it and yeah, see the fact that I can just take the joints, I get, yeah, there's your key points. Wow, I'm pretty excited right now. So about doing and using this application. So we'll see how it works out. So in 2 weeks, I'll have a little tutorial on how to use it. So if you're an Unreal Engine developer or user, you might want to look at it. Let's see if he's got a price here. Yeah, so this is there's a free version, but you can also buy the version 2, which will be available for 4.20 very soon. I think it's like $100 if I remember correctly. So looks like well spent money if you do any animation and can't afford Maya, which is what Unreal works with. Okay, so let's get into the tech closet, and let's see what I'll bring up first. So I'll bring these up first. So this is the first prototype that I created. So essentially, I took the Oculus Go and didn't really like the strap. The strap, you had to basically tighten it down, and I've really gotten used to these ratchet systems. So I created one using a kind of a headset for one of those basically welding visors, and I've actually experimented with those and actually use a 3M version in my own Neo DVR design. So I thought, well, hey, maybe I could use that here. And so then I came up from this one. I bought another headset, or not headset, headpiece, and then designed it. And as you can see, it's a little more elegant. I replaced the strap and then added a little location to put elastic on it. So I guess at this point, I can actually show it off. So let's do so. So here we go. So there you go. So essentially, this bracket here you can buy on Amazon for $16.95. I'll have a note in the show note. In fact, I can bring it up right now. And so it's $16.04, and it's available Prime. So as you can see, the way this thing was actually created is that there's a strap on top, which I kept in it, and then there's a headband in front, which is also adjustable, and then a kind of like a cotton material, if you can see here, that I took from its location in front and then put it on top, and I'll explain a little bit how I went through that. So literally, you cut off a portion of this, and you can use scissors to do so. If you can see my cursor there about here and here, and then you just let it extend forward. You take this plastic, these knobs off, which is what's used in order to put the visor on. You don't need those. And that's basically it. So let me jump back to it. So this is the end result. So again, you just lay these out flat, and they about match the length here. There's a couple of notches here, or what do you want to call it, plastic pegs. You just cut those down. I would leave a little bit so that way uh, if this tape fails, it doesn't come out on you. And essentially, I just used some gaffer's tape, just wrapped it so that it's secure along the panel that's already here. And you can remove these. In fact, I've been thinking about actually creating uh, a latch that actually fits on this swivel here, this hinge. But I talked to, I actually sent a message to John, and he said that they sadly are not available. So, and here's the other side. And then, like I said, I kept the plastic up here because I found that this provides adequate support on top of your head so that you don't have all the tension back here. And then I took and sewed this cotton directly to the band itself. And just like I said, sewed it in. And then, but make sure before you sew it together or leave a gap so that you have the band set up for your head. So essentially, you want it tight enough so that it rests on your head without obscuring uh, your view or your positioning of your head for your view. And then you just use the ratchet. And I'll go ahead and put it on. And one of the cool things, depending on how tight you want to make it, as you can see, it doesn't really move around a lot, which was a problem with the stretchy band, is that if you were active in it, it would become a problem. Or you can have it more relaxed if you just want it loose. Now, one of the things that I have on this one is I bought their new foam insert to replace the face mask that came with it because I felt it was too tight around the edges of my face. Sadly, this one's a little too wide for my face. So what was fitting fairly well before is now a little loose. So I have to tighten the band up here. And also, for whatever reason, they put more foam where my nose is. I don't know, maybe they thought I had a flat nose, which actually pushes against my nose. So I like the other one because it has more nose clearance, but it's tighter against my cheeks. This one is more comfortable on my cheeks, but tight on my nose, and again requires uh, a tighter ratchet on the back of it. So the final thing that I did to this is that I had a little piece of elastic, but if you don't want the stretchy band that you got, and you can cut off a length of it, and then essentially sew it together, and then put it through the notch or the the hole or hole the open notch where you had the original band that straddled the back of this, or you could use the band and put it from here to there if you wanted more security. It's up to you. But I created a little band. Now I have a little place to put my controller, so it's always with it. And believe me, it's already been very beneficial because I don't lose it now. So it makes it very secure against your head. As you can see, it looks fairly clean. You still have some swivel in the actual headpiece, as you can see there. So you can basically position it to the back of your head. And then I didn't need, it's pretty well designed. This is a Jackson safety replacement headgear, and it's fairly well designed and well ventilated. But if you wanted to add a little bit of cushion here, you might want to do so on the back band. But I didn't need it. And I used it for about an hour, and I felt very comfortable with it. You'll probably get a headache from looking into the thing beforehand. The wider mask, which is $20 as well, does push your face a little closer to the lenses, so you have a little bit better FOV. But I noticed that it might be a little blurrier. There's less sweet spot, so make sure you shift the actual device. So, and then it kind of has a little hand carrier. So the only disadvantage of my headpiece here is that it's rigid, but you can pop off the sides of it like you could on the previous version and stow it separately. So if you wanted to make it more compact, but it's no different than some of the other headbands out there. So it's about the same size, and makes it a lot comfortable, more tight. I'll go ahead and try it back on like that, and there you go. So pretty cool. At least I think it's pretty cool. So again, about $20 if you're not a Prime member. And let me jump back. Uh, as mentioned, just cut off the edges in front here, slide them through the slots on the unit itself, which I can bring up again. So just slide them in the side here, wrap them in tape. You know, I kept mine flat black. You could probably find a gray tape. I would highly recommend that you don't use duct tape. You know, if you wanted to highlight, I kept mine all a black and gray look, and the band I had before, but you could use the gray band and could just cut that up, and then you have a nice little elastic loop to put your controller in. So again, like $20, 30 minutes of time max, and a little sewing skill if you want to put the stretchy band to put your controller in, and then if you wanted to stitch up the little fabric on the top band. But yeah, I think it's well worth it. I'm pretty grateful. I'm glad that I did it. Here's another little illustration. So here's the front piece of it that's towards us, and basically cut off the side so it matches the length of the little band or these plastic pieces on the sides of the Oculus Go, and you're good to go. Very simple project. Like I said, less than $20, about 30 minutes of time max. Obviously, if you're gifted as far as skill in this kind of crafts, you can probably do it in far less time. And again, if you've got a needle and thread, you can easily create the elastic band to put your controller. So, um, you know, there's some other things I've been thinking about. If you notice, there are three kind of slotted holes on the side, creating some places to put like a battery pack, which I found does work with this. So if you wanted to put a battery pack to lengthen the period of time that this works, you could do that. Or, you know, maybe a hard drive, since supposedly they're going to allow USB hard drive usage, you could put that on the other side. There's all kinds of things that you can do with it. Kind of an open frame design to do what you need with it. So, okay, that's enough on that. Let's move on to the next item. So this is kind of, well, it's kind of my review of the, so let me jump back to my main screen here. And let's see if I can do this. I'm going to bring it up. Okay. So let's see, let's do this. I'll bring this up. Bring myself up, and then I'll bring this up. So this is the Lenovo Mirage. And what do they call this thing? They had the Lenovo Mirage 1, which I think was the AR headset, which we've showed before. It's kind of clunky. I don't know how well it did. They didn't provide an SDK. So this is their VR headset, and the VR headset, oh, they call this the Solo, I guess. One of the things right off the top, it uses one of those crown headbands. I'm not a fan of these. They need to have more support so that you can push it against your head. Something that the Microsoft mixed reality headsets use as well. My problem is it either it's the shape of my head, but it doesn't seem to fit really well. But the other, I mean, obviously the advantage is if you have the right head size for this, is that if you can get that tight on the top of your crown, you have less stress on your face itself. So there is an advantage there. One person who tried it said they liked that. So other than that, if you're familiar with the Daydream headset and using a phone, it's basically a Daydream headset. The huge advantage with this is that it supports 6 degrees of freedom using the Qualcomm tracking system, same one that's actually used in the Vive Focus as well. This only actually uses the same Snapdragon 835. It does have micro SD card capability. It has a USB 3 port. I couldn't hook this up and make it a device that I could see its contents with, or maybe I could, maybe just the folders, and maybe not. I can't remember now. I found that because it's actually not a phone, actually looking at VR content, unless you have the actual apps, was kind of difficult. Google themselves don't make one. They have a photo viewer, but you already have to have everything up in the cloud for it to be viewed. It doesn't seem to work with content on your device. So I loaded Skybox on it. So let me try something real quick. I should be able to let you see the screen. Let me see if I can do this. I should be able to Chromecast to it. Get my, there we go. So let's cast. Yep, so there we go. So now I'll fade to it. Okay, so you should see what I'm seeing now inside. So it's basically the same menu that you had before, actually. It's kind of a clean, I noticed I don't even have the environment. And then you have your menu, so I can go to my library, and then here are a selection of apps. And like I said, I can move in and out. You should be able to see that. So that's kind of neat. You can walk around. Skybox is kind of fun, especially, let's say I'll bring up the same app we were looking at earlier. It puts you in the movie theater, but since you're not stationary, you can actually take a different seat. And then as you can see, it has a huge screen so you really feel like you're in a movie theater, albeit the quality not being really good. And speaking of quality or graphics, let me jump back out of that. Okay. So as you can see there, the menu is fairly clean. Uh, right now they have Blade Runner for $3.99 on sale. That's kind of neat. But one thing that I noticed, I put this in developer mode. Make sure I'm next to my mouse here. My mic. I put this in developer mode so I could actually walk around as wherever I wanted to. And some people have already done this on YouTube, and it does work very effectively. The 6 degrees of freedom, or the tracking system, is extremely smooth and works really well. And like the mixed reality, Windows mixed reality system, you do need light because it has basically two cameras, probably very similar to the cameras with the mixed reality. I don't know if they're black and white. I'm probably assuming they are. So they're visible light. And so if you don't have a lot of light in the room, you won't see objects, and then you won't track. I've been thinking about creating a lighting system using some white LEDs, but I found that they didn't provide enough light, which then means that to make a portable system, you would need significant light or wattage in order for a bunch of LEDs to provide enough significant light for this thing to work properly, which kind of defeats the purpose. If you're mobile, you would have to have like a huge battery pack in order to use it. But who knows, you might want to do that. So Blade Runner, as mentioned, most of these apps, let's bring one up. They finally released it. It's Art Plunge. It was kind of cool, but having the ability to have positional tracking with it, notice how I can move closer to the icon. So once it comes up, notice I can move closer here. So while it's loading, I can actually shift my head. So that's kind of neat because you're no longer have a stationary body. So here they bring me up close, but I can actually get closer if I want to. I can move to the side. And again, it's something that they probably didn't want you to do, or they just left it off. And you can literally have 6 degrees of freedom for any app that you bring into it. So I thought that was kind of cool. So if you haven't tried this, I'll go back to this one because it's kind of neat. Essentially, when you bring it up, it creates a 3D rendering of it. And someone mentioned that you can actually walk into the frame and find out that it's not actually a full 3D content. It's kind of like one of those, what they call them, 2D relief um, views. And then you can see like Oz behind the curtain there. But it's cool from this perspective. But the fact is that I can look closer into it. I can get up and look over here and look at the content of the apple, or the fruit tray or plate is pretty cool. and I can look out there. So I, I feel like I'm actually in this room and in the actual painting, which is really cool. I think it's only like a $3, $4 app, well worth the money. They've got a few more pictures, but the two that I like are that one and this particular one, the Mona Lisa. This one's kind of neat. It takes you into the city. So if you're a Vincent van Gogh fan like I am, look at that. But the cool thing is that I can actually move into it and maybe walk down the hill there into the city itself. Just kidding. I haven't tried that yet, but that would be kind of neat. And then I can bounce out of it. So it's a neat little app. So I think it's accidental that it has 6 degrees of freedom because I turned it on. But the reason I brought that up is that if you get out of the app and go into Blade Runner, so while it's coming up. So the only thing I don't like about it is they use an LCD screen and then Fresnel lenses. So it's not quite black. It's kind of a gray, what do you want to call it, tinge to the screen. It's always slightly lit. And with the Fresnel, it creates more of a ghosting effect. So that to me is kind of a detractor. Also, I bought this used on Amazon for $3.39. They originally sell for $3.99. Thought I was going to get a good deal, but obviously there was a reason it was returned as used. It's because it has two stuck pixels. Clearly, at a small screen size, that's not a huge problem. But when you're magnified as you are in VR, they are prominent, or at least to me. And so that was an option. So let's go into scenes. Let's go into the Chinatown. And I haven't played this yet. I just got it today. But I wanted to show something that they clearly forced it. If you remember, we talked about this app using the new Seurat technique from Google. And one of the things that you can do in order to determine if you're using a Seurat scene is kind of go around the sides of it. And then you can see how it's just a bunch of little images put together in order to create the illusion of 3D. And in this particular case, as you can see, it's pretty cool and I can move forward. But if I move too far, let's see if I can do so. Yeah, see how it tells me to recenter the headset. So I have very little positional tracking in this, so I can't move around in it. And they force that on it, even though my developer mode says that it's off. The characters look kind of creepy too. They could have done a better job there, but it is a mobile app. Um, so I haven't played it yet. I look forward to it, but it does provide a little bit, but they force you to go to black if you move too far from it. And again, it's probably not to break the illusion that everything in front of you is not full 3D. But I wish they would have because it would have been fun. And so I'll have to write to them and see if there's a way that one can tinker with that. Okay, so that's about it. Other than that, the headset I think is pretty cool. Um, I think if it sold for 300, it'd be well worth it. 400 is a little pushing it, especially since the screen is actually LCD and not an AMOLED screen. And but this Qualcomm tracking system is really impressive. As you know, supposedly the Vive Focus will be out. If the Vive Focus comes out, I've heard that it's going to be somewhere between $500 to $600. The only huge difference between this and that is that it is a higher um, quality screen, and I think even a higher resolution. It's the same one that's in the Samsung Odyssey Windows and mixed reality headset. But at $500 to $600 to have something like this, I don't really know if it's going to be worth it. It uses the Vive um, SDK, and it looks like it's getting some traction. But yeah, it's kind of a nice unit. But again, if they dropped it to 300, I think it could sell better. The Daydream ecosystem leaves a little bit to be desired, in my opinion. I don't know if the Vive, what is it they call it, port will be any better. But the fact is that it's selling really well in China could mean something. But so there you go. There is the Lenovo Mirage. Now I've already forgotten the name of it. Oh well, you'll have to look it up. Yeah, again, You can probably find one used for about $339. All right, so finally, the last item that I'm going to talk about. So one of the things that it's been keeping me busy is this little guy here, and this is based off an OEM AR headset that's used for phones. Well, I have actually replaced it with a 2560 by 1440 LCD screen, 6 inch, so it's very wide, and using the core sensor. And so I actually have it here with me. So there we go. So essentially, it's reasonably priced. You can probably get this for about $35. Again, it's made for phones. The problem that I have with it is, and then I've actually fine-tuned the shaders and the cameras for it in Unity, but the actual, if you notice, they're kind of like a parabolic. It's very similar to the Leap Motion design. You essentially create a semi-mirrored surface, kind of like sunglasses, so that the screen can reflect off of it and then back in your eyes. But we curve it a little bit so it magnifies it, because if you ever try to look at a little tiny screen like that, the images are very small, and then it projects it in a stereo fashion so that your eyes fuse it. The problem is it wasn't designed for such a large screen, so I had to modify the cameras in Unity, fix that, and so this was the results of my output. So that's my little Vince character there. So like many of the systems, including the new Magic Leap, they're always semi-transparent. The cool thing about this has about 110 FOV. It's about that of the Dreamworld system. So let me kind of back up here. Look at the shoes there. So I made this with fantastic setting in Unreal. I'm using this with my belt nook, so it's not even a real beefy computer. And clearly, I could see some potential here. So I'm going to talk to the people out at Dreamworld who make the Dream Glass, who have hand tracking, and use that with it. And because basically, once I start marketing something like this, it would be $350, $400, and as you know, you can buy the Dreamworld for 400. It looks nice, so I should have one in a couple of days. If I do, I should be able to marry this. I've already looked at their SDK, and I should be able to use the occipital core sensor, which is what I have here, and they will have obviously multiple SDKs that it will support. So if you're interested in providing uh, a robust tracking system, contact Occipital, because it's well worth it. And their software I've used over several years now is fairly easy to work with. Their Windows version has a tool that works with Unity, and they will actually support other systems in the future. And as you can see there, and let me go back and play it. Tracking is pretty good. Right now it's only at 30 frames per second, but I supposedly should be able to, once I have this working on USB 3 instead of USB 2, I'll be able to go up to like 240 frames per second, which is very important, at least double, in this case, quadruple the number of frames, because then you can use some techniques like Magic Leap, or actually HoloLens to interpolate to provide a very steady positional tracking system. The bridge system, as it evolves with the Windows, will also support anchoring so that an object stays stationary. They do a very good job with it. And the other cool thing is that you'll be able to do occlusion. So if something falls off, one of your VR falls off the side of an object, it will literally disappear because it'll be occluded by the object that was scanned initially. So that's all going to be coming. The fact is that I can walk around, or in this case, move around on my desk to see this object while looking at it. It was pretty impressive. And again, basically all under, I don't know, if you include the computer, about $1,000. So significantly cheaper. Again, it's still very raw in prototype form. But combining this with, say, let's say the dream world could be very exciting, and we should have some news really soon about that. All right, so that's about it for today. So hope you like the show. If you do, please like it. I'd appreciate that. And if I've upset you with my talk about Defense Distributed, I apologize. I'm not directly. I know there are a lot of responsible people out there. My concern is the people that aren't or intentionally wanting to do harm. We don't need to make things easier for people. Again, I'm smart enough to realize most of this stuff is already out there on the web. So he's not really doing anything other than trying to create attention for himself. So if I upset you with that, leave me a note, tell me why, and your reasonings for it. And if there's anything else you want to see next week, or 2 weeks from now, like I said, we're going to be covering animation, and maybe I'll have some more news with the occipital core and the dream world. Dream glass combination, and be able to do the whole episode while I'm walking around. I don't know. But there you go. And I appreciate it. Have a good weekend, and I'll see you in 2 weeks. Bye.